Welcome to Newville.
Sorry, the meeting's ready to go.
Thank you, Marcy. We got about a minute before I'm going to start. I'm not sure where Dean went either. Dean, are you there?
Yes.
Awesome.
Battery 70%.
Okay, it is 6:30. So it looks like we are ready to go. So I'm going to call to order the December 14th, 2020 regular meeting of council at 6:30 p.m. And I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. I'm going to ask council to please unmute yourself. And I'm just going to be checking to make sure everybody is here. So if you could please give me a verbal confirmation. Councillor Baxter?
Here.
Councillor Day?
Here.
Councillor Jansen?
Present.
Councillor Logan?
Here.
Councillor Kobayashi?
Here.
Councillor Parkinson?
I'm here.
Great, thank you. And clearly Mayor Martin is here as well. Moving on to approval of the agenda, I'm looking for a motion to approve the near-term, long-term, and regular council meeting agenda for December 14th, please. Marcy, I am not seeing anybody's hands, which usually means that I am not co-host. So I think you're going to need to make me co-host so that I can see people raising their hands.
It's fixed right now.
Let's be a moment, council. While that's going on, Councillor Baxter was going into his little hole there or something in the forest. Okay, there we go. Councillor Logan has moved it. Councillor Kobayashi has seconded it. I'm going to clear hands. Is there any discussion? Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just a little discussion on the near-term agenda. I really appreciate getting them and seeing what's upcoming, but it's probably appropriate that we that I mention if something's upcoming and I think there's some background required before it comes. I think this is the venue to put that in there. So I noticed that on January 25th, we're going to request for affordable housing funds for 85 Belmont. And I personally, I don't know about the rest of council, I personally would like to sort of understand really where we're going with these affordable housing funds. You know, obviously they're entrusted to us by the developers to do what we can for affordable housing in the community. And I'm not sure what the current policies are, what happens in neighboring municipalities, and you know, what options we have for these funds that we're entrusted with. So it would seem to me that rather than just diving into, you know, what do we do on one project, it would be useful to have a little report to sort of say, what are our options? How do we best utilize these monies? Does it make more sense to, you know, give it to Habitat for Humanity or bigger projects or smaller projects, or how do we do it? Just so that we can be as effective and efficient as we can with that. So I'm not sure there's anything to add, except I think it's fair that when I see these things coming, it's appropriate to flag them to staff.
Thank you. I will actually give an opportunity for Mr. Earl to comment if you wish. Mr. Earl?
Thank you, Worship. So administration has heard that, and on the 25th, when that comes, we'll endeavor to provide as much background as we can with respect to how previous decisions to allocate funds from those reserves had been made, how that compares to this particular ask, and what other communities in the region do with their affordable housing funds.
Great.
Thank you.
That meets your needs, Councillor Parker?
Very much so. Yeah, much appreciated.
Excellent. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to call the question. This is in regards to approval of the near-term, short, long-term, and council meeting. Any in opposition, please raise your virtual hands. Nobody opposes. Moving on to 3, public participation. There were no written submissions received, and no members of the public have registered to speak. And I will just confirm one last time with Marcy, or is that correct still?
That's correct. There was no submissions.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on to Mayor's message. I just have a couple little things to go over. First of all, I would be very remiss to not mention that one of our councillors this evening has a birthday. So Councillor Kobayashi, on behalf of all the council, happy birthday today, and thank you so much for working through this.
Happy 70th, Doug.
Happy birthday, Doug.
Dougie.
Yeah, we won't dignify Councillor Jansen's comment. Moving on, just for the public's awareness, later on this evening, we're going to be talking about the Restart program and a request from West Shore Park and Rec. I did think it was important to allow our public to know that the province has provided funds in regards to the Restart program for the city of Colwood. That amount was for $3,476,000. And this, the money that is meant for the Restart program is meant to address revenue shortfalls, facility reopenings and operating costs, emergency planning and response costs, bylaw enforcement and protective services like fire protection and police, computer and other electronic technology costs to improve interconnectivity and virtual communications, services for vulnerable people, for example, people living with disabilities, mental illness or addictions, people experiencing homelessness or other vulnerabilities, and other related costs. So that is a dollar amount that will be discussed in depth at council during the budgetary process. And so this will be an opportunity for everybody to hear where we could be putting those monies. I also had 2 phone calls in the last week that I think it's important for both council and the public to be aware of. I did have a call with the Deputy Minister for Public Safety. And on that call, I was informed that the province and the federal government have now cut the RCMP budget in regards to ECOM. And ECOM is now, starting in 2023, going to be the full responsibility of the municipalities rather than the province and the federal government, which means we will need to look at the RCMP budgets as we go through the budgetary process to understand. Presently, we do not understand or know what our costs are in regards to ECOM for the city of Colwood. We were promised, or I was promised, a communication letter from the province outlining exactly what that was. And to this point, I have not received it. Today, as well, I also had a call with the new Minister for Municipal Affairs, Jody Osborne. It was a very good call, and she was just basically touching base. There was about 40 mayors on the call for Vancouver Island. The biggest takeaway was that the provincial government does have an expectation that municipalities will be helping providing locations for vaccinations when vaccinations do become available for COVID. And is recommending that we at least consider that through the budgetary process. We don't know if that will be any cost to us. Staff are now aware of that, and staff will be doing the investigations, and we'll bring that back through the budgetary process. I don't anticipate that there should be costs for Colwood. We will probably do it out of buildings that are recent or ours, but that's just something. As well, this being the last meeting for 2020 for us, I did want to take a moment and thank the public. This has been an extraordinary year. And I have to say that I have never been prouder of my community than 2020. It has truly demonstrated that we are our brothers and sisters keepers, that we look after each other, that we have an aspiration here in Colwood to be as kind and as supportive of each other as possible. And I have seen that over and over and over. And I am so proud of our public in our community for doing that. I think it speaks so well of all of us and who and what we represent and are. In addition, I also want to take a moment and thank the City of Colwood staff. This has been an extraordinary year for them as well. They have taken the issues around COVID to heart and have worked diligently and as hard as they can to provide, which I believe, an amazing service. We have kept the city going. We have prospered in 2020, and we can look at and we can discuss all the development and the things that are landing in Colwood, but we couldn't do any of that if our staff wasn't doing this incredible work. So a big thank you to all of them. And then finally to council, I want to say thank you to you all. I was thinking about this, and I recognized something, and I realized something. I have had, and Councillor Day and Councillor Logan are aware of this as well, because they've been on council for a long time. When you're on council, there's a lot of hard work, and you do a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of things that are happening, and that has continued through COVID. But the rewards that we sometimes get, the opportunity to socialize with each other, the opportunities to socialize with our colleagues, for example, at UBCM and at other public events, as well as being involved in just the general public and being able to be a counselor and to be representing your community out in the public is a real joy that's been taken away from you guys. And you've been stuck with all the work without all the positive reinforcement. And I really started to recognize and realize that this year. This has been a very difficult year, and I'm very inspired and I'm very appreciative of the amazing work that this council has done. You guys have been spectacular, and I think it's just important for you to recognize that I at least understand that you got all the work done and you didn't really get a lot of the fun stuff behind it as well. So hopefully 2021 will hold an opportunity for us to do some more social things and an opportunity to actually have some fun with our community as well. Saying that, I would just like to wish everybody in our community a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year's, whatever faith that you may have. I hope that it's a joyful and blessed season for you. So saying that, I would like to move on, pass my mayor's message on to 5, adoption and receipt of minutes. This is 5.1, which is the regular council meeting minutes for November 23rd. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Is there any errors, omissions, questions? Sorry, I should have cleared hands. Excuse me just for a second. Go ahead, and if you have errors, omissions, questions, please raise your hands now. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 5.2, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of November 16th. Looking for these minutes to be received. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Parkinson. Seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Excuse me, I'm just going to lower hands. Are there any errors, omissions, questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.1. This is a correspondence from Mayor Victor Cummings from the City of Vernon regarding a letter of support regarding no cost access to all prescription contraception. Discussion? Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just don't think there's enough information for me to, tender my support or not support for this. I don't quite understand. I sort of understand this, but, the rationale behind this is very short. So I just don't think there's enough information for me to give you an honest, yeah, I support this or I don't support this. So that's how I feel anyway. So I would suggest that we try to get more information on this before we make a decision on this.
Okay, so Councillor Kobayashi, we do have the staff recommended that we just received the letter, but would you like to actually add to have staff seek out additional information?
Yes, please. That's exactly what I'd like to do.
Okay, so so Councillor Kobayashi has moved the recommendation that the letter be received and asked that staff provide additional information and report back to council. I'm going to clear everybody's hands just for a moment. Do I have a seconder to that? That is seconded by Councillor Day. Councillor Kobayashi, do you have anything else that you wish to add? Okay, then I will go to Councillor Day. Councillor Day, did you wish to comment as a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy that we're looking for more information. I think this is very important. There are options especially for youth to be able to access free contraception in Colwood. But that is not always the preferred method for many of our youth, especially youth who are transitioning out of care. They're at very high risk for a number of things, including sexual exploitation and homelessness. And having access to free contraception, I think is a real benefit for everyone throughout the province, and to ensure that you can do so privately and not be running into your neighbors or someone else. That is a major issue for youth. And I just think that we should get the information to make sure everyone's comfortable with what we support. But this is a very good initiative that may really help, especially youth.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands wishing to speak. So I'm going to call the question. Oh, I do see sorry, excuse me. There is a hand, Councillor Baxter.
I just wanted to say that I absolutely support Doug's suggestion, and I hope that the first place staff will go to look for more information is the city of Vernon, rather than spending a lot of staff time trying to dig out things that maybe they've already dug out. At least I hope they have to make the suggestion. Thanks.
Awesome. That's probably good advice, Councillor Baxter. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Moving on to new business, 7.1. This is a notice of motion from Councillor Dean Jansen regarding the cenotaph. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. And we've had discussions at this table in the past about several of us who are on a path to try and remediate and reinvigorate our personal cenotaph here for the community, which is located at the Wandafuka Rec Center. So I understand it's in a bit of a unique location and that we don't completely govern the property. However, there is an opportunity to leverage our funds with a grant application before the federal government, with the deadline being in March. And given the timeliness of this, my suggestion to this table is that we move forward with the grant application, thereby maximizing our available funding. And then later on down the road, once the monies have been received, if they are, then we can move to a discussion with the Wandafuka Society or the board, of which I expect Councillor Parkinson will champion with all of his available skills. And then we'll move on a path to hopefully remediate and make some beautification as far as the landscaping and the planting. So all I'm asking here today is a motion from council to support staff making an application for a grant opportunity from Veterans Affairs Canada. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so Councillor Jansen, just before I do have some other hands, and I'm going to go to them in a second. In my notes, I have a recommendation that the draft letter titled "Colwood Cenotaph somebody help me.
Remediation.
Thank you. I don't know why I can't say that right now. Community War Memorial Project funding be approved by council and be sent to the West Shore Parks and Rec Society. Is that the motion you're looking for, or is there a different motion that you would prefer?
Yeah, so for clarification, the letter advises the Juan de Fuca board that we are going to be making this application, and that the funds will be in favor of beautification around. So yes, the letter fits. So the my ask of us is that we support moving forward for a grant application, and that we do that collaboratively with Juan de Fuca as per your letter. However, that you want to frame that, or Marcy wants to frame that, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I thank you, Councillor Jansen. I guess what I'm trying to do is get a very clear motion. And so I have a written clear motion, but I'm not exactly sure if that written motion is equal to what you're requesting, Councillor Jansen. And if it's not, or actually maybe I will go to staff. Staff, Councillor Jansen's comments, can Councillor Jansen's comments be achieved through the recommendation that is before us on paper? Mr. Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff are recommending, should council want to proceed with this, that we seek the permission of the Juan de Fuca Parks and Recreation Society to apply for a grant on their behalf, and that we would manage the grant if successful.
Councillor Jansen, you comfortable with that motion?
That seems, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but I understand the intent of the letter. And do we, and perhaps Robert can advise if we need a motion to actually make the grant application, or if this motion before us will suffice.
Should the motion before council to approve the letter be approved, that would both allow us to seek the permission of the society, and if received, proceed with a grant application.
That sounds just fine to me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I have a mover. I'm going to clear everybody's hands. My apologies. Can I get a seconder, please? That is seconded by Councillor Parkinson. I'm going to clear hands a third time, and I'm going to go back. I know there was a speaking list. Please add your names to the speaking list. Councillor Parkinson, you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Jansen, for your initiative here. And I think you've given me a pretty easy task to work with the board to look for their support. I think historically there was some discussion about moving the cenotaph. I think that the discussions that council has had, that's probably not going to happen anytime. And the West Shore Parks and Rec staff did, in my opinion, an incredibly good job of tidying the place up in a challenging year when they were short staff and trying to get a lot of other stuff done. So it looks good now, but yes, it could look great. And let's keep pushing and get it to be as good as it can be. So totally support this.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kobayashi, then Baxter.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a comment. Should we also be sending a letter off to the local Legion here for their support on this? It's going to help. I know that, and maybe even to, I don't know if the base commander can do this, but the local base, since the people that use that cenotaph are people primarily from the Belmont Park area. So I'm just going to make these suggestions because having that letter of support from the Legion will count a lot when you're making these applications. Thank you.
Great. So I will, Mr. Earl, can you just take that as a recommendation to just go ahead and do it, or would you like it actually built into the motion?
Staff will take that as direction.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, I completely support this, and I'd like to make a motion relating to this after we're done with this one.
Okay, I will come back to you. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Seeing none. Motion arising from Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, so my motion is that after completing the application for grants and at a time that staff consider appropriate in the process, this be referred to the Heritage Commission for comment. When I say this, I mean the idea of redoing or fixing up the cenotaph.
Okay. Do I have a seconder to that? That is seconded by Councillor Jansen. I'll clear the hands. I'm just going to clear everybody's hands for a moment. Councillor Baxter, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, just that there are some experts in military heritage and that could provide us with useful comments, perhaps on the Heritage Commission. So I think it's a useful thing to do.
Great, thank you. Councillor Jansen, you were the seconder. Do you have any comments?
No, I think we should leverage whatever opportunities we may have. We will need advice on making sure that we're consistent with wishes of our forefathers that built it, and people like the Legion and people like the Heritage Commission can certainly offer some input in that regard.
Great, thank you. Is there any other comments? Just looking for hands. Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 7.2. This is options for the Colwood participation in the Clean BC Better Homes rebate program. There is a recommendation from the December 7th Committee of the Whole meeting, but I will invite Ms. Collinson to speak. She has a response to a question that arose during the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, just a quick follow-up regarding the top-up options discussed during last week's COW meeting. The top-up options included fuel switch heat pump, EnerGuide home evaluation, electric service upgrade, heat pump water heater, and contractor participation incentive. And the question was regarding which top-up option had the greatest impact on greenhouse gas reduction. So effectively, 3 of these are educational and can lead to tangible savings only if and when the customer chooses to undertake the upgrades. As for the fuel switch heat pump and the heat pump water heater upgrades, they have a directly attainable GHG impact. So on average, savings are 3.36 tons per year of annual emission savings per home for the fuel switch heat pump option, and then 1.36 tons per year in annual emission savings for the heat pump water heater. And I'll just add a further note that next year we're planning on starting work on the low carbon resiliency plan. And through this work, we're intending to update the GHG inventory information for the city. So we'll be able to offer more detailed information as to what each household produces in the future.
Thank you so much for following up with that. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. I was just going to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jansen. Thank you. I'm going to clear hands. Discussion. Seeing nobody's hands, I'm going to call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.3. This is the development variance permit application DVP 20-010 for 681 and 651 Allendale Road. This is a recommendation from the December 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor Kobayashi, you're moving the. Oh, sorry, Doug, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to move the motion as recommended.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to assume Councillor Baxter, you're seconding it.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.4. This is the rezoning application RZ 20-005 for 1764 Island Highway. This is a recommendation from the December 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm going to please ask Ms. Hernandez to provide an overview of the memo that she has written. Committee may have some questions regarding that December 7th Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I prepared a brief memo in response to some of the three main concerns that we heard from committee members regarding this application. And I just want to start off by talking a little bit about the mixed-use employment center and land use designation in the official community plan. And the focus of that designation is the employment generating land uses and that employment base that we see. So that's the focus of that Allendale Island Highway and Royal Roads, properties around those areas. And I guess when we receive an application, we look to balance the various requirements that are hard and must be met with the design guidelines that give us some discretion and flexibility to be able to see what design guidelines are most appropriate given the layout and the challenges and the complexity of our environmental objectives, as well as all sorts of other city policy that we're trying to achieve, various different goals, sometimes supporting goals, and some others somewhat conflicting objectives that we're trying to achieve. So with all that said, we did went back at the request of the applicant. We immediately met with them. We have met today twice to go over some of these concerns. So we've looked at the mid-block public pedestrian walkway, the opportunities to achieve that connection between Island Highway and Wilford Road through this development, as well as having a look at the pattern of development in the existing connections that already exist on that stretch of land on Island Highway. And so at this point, we do not feel like that the best connection could be achieved on this particular site, but we are committed to continue to look for opportunities of a connection further north. We have guidelines that speak to clear, safe, and accessible pedestrian pathways. We don't think that a narrow walkway right up against a building and sandwich between retaining wall and a building would provide the safest, best option for a connection, for a safe pedestrian connection, knowing that we have already some challenges with unwanted activity that happens at the rear of these industrial sites and properties backing onto the park. So we are cognizant of all the challenges that we're trying to balance. We also look at the site pedestrian movements, and the applicant is committed to continue to work with us at the development permit stage to make clearer patterns of movements, internal movements between buildings for patrons and businesses. We are also continuing a conversation about the building orientation and ways to improve the relationship between the building and the street, and we're continuing to work. There's a willing applicant that we're continuing to have those conversations, and the details will need to be sorted out at the development permit stage, which we will shift our focus once we get to third reading and we hear kind of where council is going with supporting of this application or not, and then we'll focus on that development permit aspect. So that's everything.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Can I get comment from staff? It can be anybody, but it's my understanding, and I learned this earlier today, that there is a pedestrian right-of-way around A&W that that goes straight down to Wilford, which is about 50 meters from this property. Can I get a comment if that's accurate or not accurate?
Hi, Rob. I'm sorry, Mayor Martin. To answer the chair, yes, that is correct. There is existing easement that exists. I would have to pull the legal charge to make sure it includes the pedestrian. Because the area of development, 1764, is this one specific land area, the area that you're speaking of, the existing statutory right-of-way for utilities, is on 1772. It is not part of this application as it stands, but there is a through road without the grade problems or difficulties that's 6 meters wide that goes right from Wilford Road all the way up through the top. Eventually, 1772 is part of the Galaxy's use at present. It does not form part of this agreement right now, but we could see development opportunities of that land and could look at that easement to ensure that includes the public as a pedestrian thoroughfare. We'll look at it at that time. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have 3 hands up, or excuse me, 2 hands up. So I will go to Councillor Jansen first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and myself and Councillors Logan and Parkinson actually walked that area and that route. And I can tell you, we used that ramp that is located right behind the A&W, and I know that Councillor Logan had some history on that that I didn't, and I guess the community did invest funds in support of the construction for that ramp, and it's quite easy to navigate, even though there is grade change. I believe that there is that opportunity for pedestrians, and perhaps between the development of this property before us and the neighboring property in there somewhere, we can append to that. I don't think it is a stumbling block to this application. I do believe this is a large step forward for that piece of property and that piece of roadway. I did have a question for Yasmin or Brent, but the front building specifically, which is the showcase building with the parking in front of it, is the building configured with separate units to the rear, or are those units at the front, are they straight through from front to back?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Jensen. The units are in blocks built parallel to the road. So there's one block at the front, one block in the mid, and one block at the back, built parallel to both Island Highway and Wilford Road.
Specifically, I was about the front building, and perhaps Yasmin has a little more detail, but the showcase units on the front with all the glass, are they separate units to the rear of those? So you drive around the rear and it's a separate business at the back, or are they all the way through that building?
Yeah, so the main building off of Island Highway has office spaces up above that are separate and apart from the ground floor unit. So the ground floor units are connected to the loading bay at the back.
Okay.
But then that loading bay with frontage is separate and apart from the office space that is all in the second floor. So the second floor is office space, but
Right.
it's not attached to that loading bay.
So I think I get it. So in other words, you drive around to the rear, there's no separate businesses at the backside on the bottom floor?
That would be correct. There are no additional businesses at the rear of that.
Okay. And I think too, as far as the frontage goes, this is a very large lot. And I don't think you get the scale until you go down there and actually walk it. And I do believe there's all sorts of opportunities out at the front, which I will leave to staff as far as a transition zone by the use of some fancy landscaping or what have you, some beautification in between from the street. And it actually is separated by some grade. So you pull in and enter the property, it immediately drops a little bit as well. So there's an opportunity there for some separation from grade as well. Might soften that front building and the transition. So those are some of my comments and questions. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, I was a bit concerned when I saw the report mentioning finding a route through to the north because of there's not likely to be any rezoning or redevelopment to the north of the property for quite a while, I wouldn't expect. Whereas presumably the rest of the Galaxy property will redevelop. They've cleared all the cars out. That would seem to be a good signal. So I wonder if staff could let us know as soon as they find out whether there is in fact a right-of-way through that property linking Wilford Road and Island Highway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Staff will get that to you when they can, I guess. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I quite like this project. I think it's going to bring some good jobs and some good businesses to Colwood. I don't know the developers, but the reputation is that they're competent and professional, and we should be able to expect a pretty nice project out of it. But I have to say, I'm disappointed in the staff report. And I say that reluctantly because so far what we've seen from Yasmin has been first class, and I don't know this, but the staff report I don't think is sufficient for me at least to make a decision here. I mean, the first point about the mid-block pedestrian walkway, the OCP is pretty clear. It says, create blocks if you can't, and where large blocks are unavoidable, provide publicly accessible mid-block pedestrian and bicycle pathways. Great idea. Then the concept of moving to the north, I think, as Mr. Baxter mentioned, I don't see it. The properties within Colwood that go from Old Island Highway to Wilford to the north would include the courthouse, Craftsman Collision, and just a tiny little bit of McDonald's. Whether they rezone or not, I don't see the topography being any better to the north than this site. We've heard that there is a walkway, and I certainly did walk it with Dean and Gordy, and it's a nice grade. It's up closer to Saunders Subaru, and whether it goes all the way through, I think Mr. Molnar said he'd have to check what the wording actually was, whether it's allows pedestrians. It's got a better grade, but I mean, honestly, when you talk about a mid-block walkway, this is the site, and a walkway through this site would come out adjacent to the signal that's that it crosses the highway there to get to the rec center and the transit exchange. So, I'm just disappointed that what we have in front of us on the issue of mid-block walkway that is in our OCP seems like it's a good idea. We've been kind of sloughed off with, well, maybe one of the sites to the north would be a better place. I don't see that. And maybe there's something to the south might work. Maybe somebody else will develop. Maybe they'll want to do it. I don't know. So I just think that a little more substance to this subject would be important. And then the second thing in the report is the site pedestrian movements. And the applicant would be pleased to realize good pedestrian site circulation. Frankly, I'm sure he would. I mean, obviously it'd be good for his business to have it there, but what does that mean? It probably means a whole bunch of different things to different people. If I have a business in building 1 and somebody parks at the other end of the building and has a nice wide sidewalk to walk to my front door, I'm happy. That's great pedestrian circulation. If I'm, maybe I'm an accountant on the offices on building 1 and I've got a client down on the other side of Wilford, building 3, I might want to hop downstairs, cross the parking lot, through the lobby of building 2, cross the street to my client, do some business, come back. Great pedestrian circulation. If I'm working late in building 3 and I decide I want to go up to the Island Highway to grab a bus or a burger at McDonald's or whatever, and I find that the doors are locked for cutting through the other 2 buildings, maybe I don't have good pedestrian circulation. So again, yes, I think we all are saying we'd like to see an excellent pedestrian circulation, but what is it? It just, I don't think we understand what we're looking at here. And then the third one, the building orientation. I know these council meetings are long and boring, and people might sort of lose touch. But I mean, the discussion last week was the OCP seems to indicate that buildings here should be built right up to the front property line. The developer was quite clear, saying, "Well, that's not our concept. That doesn't work for us. We don't want to build up the front property line." And here we have something saying we do not anticipate to conflict with the front setback requirements for the MUEC2 zone, which is 7.5 meters, whatever it is. Well, we know that. We know. Do we care about what the OCP says about building the front property line or not? Again, I frankly don't. I'm happy with where they're building the buildings, but just to have it, something that says, well, it seems like they've missed the point of the discussion. They haven't referenced the OCP and what it's asking for, and to say, I think Yasmin was good tonight when she said they have to balance a whole bunch of things, but here they just said, well, we won't conflict with it. Well, it was, on behalf of the developer and what we've seen so far, nobody was expecting them to. So that's it. And then the final point is that last week we were also talking about a DP or a DVP to reduce the side yard setbacks from 6 meters that are currently in this zone to 0. And again, that to me probably has to be walked through at the same time as the rezoning here, because they get their zoning and don't get their setback relaxations. I mean, we've basically neutered, 15 or 20% of the site, which probably is devastating for the economics of this thing. So to me, that we have to be we can't talk about the rezoning and then go later on, actually, no, we won't change the setback because we haven't done anybody any favors. So I just felt that there were some substantive discussions last week, and what we've got in front of us doesn't address them very well. So frankly, I would like to move that we table this and ask for a better, more complete report from our staff. So I'd like to make that motion.
Okay. You have made that motion. I'm going to have to clear hands. To be honest, I've got, okay. Sorry, I'm going to have to clear.
I can make it later. I can make it later if that's more appropriate, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I just had staff wishing to comment, and with a motion to defer or refer, that would need to just go then. So it's up to you, Councillor Parkinson. I can ask for a seconder and do it right now, or I can have staff respond and then have other people also comment.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear all the comments in the world, but
okay, I will come back to you. I promise. Before I look for a motion that originates from the committee of the whole, I will come back to you for your referral motion. I did see Ms. Clark wish to comment, and then I also saw Ms. Hernandez also had her hand up. So I will leave it to staff to fight it out who wishes to speak.
Hi there. So I will try to maybe speak to the intent of the memo was to provide some broad direction as to the path that we're taking to resolve, or the conversations that are being had and the thoughts that are being explored based on council's guidelines on the elements that are of interest. A lot of the details that maybe is being sought are part of our development permit discussion. So the level of detail at which we can get at a rezoning stage. So the rezoning conversation is about land use and density, about those broad parameters. So if you conceive of this application, this applicant could get their rezoning and sell the property and come back with a complete different layout proposal that still meets the intent of the zone. So the application at hand at the moment is a rezoning. And while we are aware that that development variance permit has to come hand in hand at a given point when we get certainty that council is comfortable with the land use, proposed land uses and density, there wouldn't be like if the land use and the density and those parameters are not to council satisfaction, then there is no point to discuss the setback variance, because the setback variance is very specific to this particular proposal. And once the applicant has some certainty that this proposal in terms of land use and density is supported, then we bring forward the other more specific matters of the application, and internally we look to those development permits conversations to start addressing some of those comments. But I think, and maybe Carrie can step in and comment on it. I don't feel like I was asked to provide a development permit type of analysis to satisfy your concerns at this point, but maybe that's what you're wanting. But I'll let Carrie probably fill in the blanks.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I am unable to get the video on for some reason, so I will just speak to Councillor Parkinson's comments about a few of the design elements. So Jasmine was correct to say that this is an application for use and density, and that we will be addressing the design guidelines with the development permit application. However, I would like to highlight that part of the reviewing a development permit includes a whole range of different guidelines that we are working to balance. So, for example, some of the other aspects that may pertain to the site would be the crime prevention through environmental design. So relative to the pathway, we need to make sure that there is eyes on the street, that sort of element. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a balance of all of these items, and we are taking everything that council is saying and bringing forward to the table to our discussions with the developer. But I think this is also an opportunity for us to work together with council to understand what the expectations are for the mixed use employment center, as well as Island Highway and Souk Road. So perhaps we can consider working together in the new year as a visualization exercise. So I just wanted to put that forward.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 people's hands up, so I will just keep going, keep moving forward. So I have Councillor Logan, then Councillor Day, then Councillor Baxter. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also want to thank staff for the reset to remind us that we are only really dealing with the land use aspect of this application. Sometimes we get sidetracked with some of the other stuff, so I do appreciate that. As was mentioned, we did walk the site yesterday and gave us some good perspective. I think the applicant has done a really good job here in detailing the uses that they can see the land producing. I note that it really isn't a transition zone, so I'm not fussed about the orientation. I think it's probably appropriate, and you know, tweaking it too much also will have an impact on parking as well. So we bring the building up to the street, we lose that parking because it won't necessarily be accommodated in the back. And you know, in terms of the mid-block pedestrian walkway, I guess what gets me going is a bit of the timing. You know, if that was an expectation of all the properties when they develop, we need to be upfront and let them know that when they come into staff that with a proposal that's an expectation, and that wasn't an expectation necessarily until this application came before us, and so I'm not sure how fair it is to ask the developer to rework their plans at this state. Further, and as was mentioned below or previously, there is an easement and an access 50 yards down the road that the city paid over $100,000 towards to build. That is more accessible than any mid-block walkway would be at this location. The grade is significant, and so it really lends itself only to a steep set of stairs. And I agree with staff that perhaps a little bit more north would be more mid-block, and we should be, although there might be a McDonald's and other businesses there now, that may not be the case in a few years once that whole area starts to redevelop. And I think that's when the opportunity would be to try to get a more grade appropriate mid-block access. But I I do recognize that this project will have a significant impact on that corridor, a significant positive impact. And so I don't have the same red flags, I suppose. I'm just encouraged by the level of detail actually that the applicant has put into it. So, I won't be supporting a tabling motion. I think we need to continue to move forward. And as staff have mentioned, some of the items that we have raised will be addressed through the development permit process, and that we should be focusing here on the land use aspect. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think that it is very difficult to look at the area, and the OCP did its best to identify the important factors. I don't think that our previous 20 years ago planning for this area really envisioned the highest and best for the area. It's actually a truly beautiful corridor. And when I've been to some of the businesses in that area, I've been very sad to see that some of the natural beauty has just been ignored. So I do think that it is important to ensure that the site has good pedestrian flow, because that's what our OCP says we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish it not being all about the cars and making a space for human scale development and good corridors for pedestrian use. So instead of driving from one parking spot to another parking spot, you just leave your car put and get on transit and go where you need to go. So I'm hoping that this is a good opportunity for us to reset in a positive light, work with the developer and with staff, and really bring that vision forward, because the difficulty that exists, and it's not just this project, it's many that get caught up in what part of the plan is the rezoning and what part of the plan is your development permit, and it all has to work together. And if we don't match those up ahead of time, we get inferior results. So I am interested in taking the time to be effective for the long term for Colwood's development, and also for the developers, so that we don't run into a bunch of hurdles as we've seen happen before, where expectations are X, Y, and Z, and what we actually get is G, F, and H. So we really need to have a clear vision of what we're approving. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
I hate to take issue with somebody wearing a Santa hat, but I'm afraid I have to do it. On the fairness aspect, I won't say requirement, because OCPs are a bit vague on that, but certainly the suggestion that we ought to have mid-block connections is in the OCP. And I know Councillor Logan can't be suggesting that people who want to develop in Colwood don't have to read the OCP and check out all its requirements. So there's no reason for the developer to be taken by surprise. And it's certainly fair that every development be looked at in relation to the OCP to see if there's something in there that maybe we should require. And I fully understand that maybe in the conversation between staff and the developer, this mid-block walkway was not brought up. But after all, that's what we're here for, is the political opinion where staff may have a different opinion. And I fully understand that this is perhaps not an easy thing for the developer to consider giving up. However, this is for the long-term benefit of the people of Colwood, all of them who might frequent this area. Now, the fact that there is this right-of-way, or we think there's this right-of-way, Councillor Logan sounds like he's got very good information on it. That may solve the whole problem. The one I'm talking about, the one on the rest of the Galaxy property. I've always known there was a road through there, but assumed it was private. But I hope that will solve the problem. We won't have to discuss that one anymore. But the on the issue of this is a rezoning, item 3 in the memorandum is about front yard setbacks. And it revolves around two things. One, the front setback, which is in the zoning. And this is a zoning after all. So I think at a zoning, we're appropriately discussing an item that's in the zoning bylaw. And secondly, it's about the bringing buildings up to the road, which is, just like the mid-block crosswalk, it's in the OCP, and everybody should understand that going into this. The other item, the site pedestrian movements, also in the OCP. So there's no need for anybody to be surprised here or taken unawares. And there's nothing in here that isn't a logical part of a zoning discussion. And I'll just say the very last thing I'll say is that development permits usually don't even come to council. And all of council should know, be aware that if there's something that council wants on a development that staff might not be consider as important as council does, then council has to get it at the rezoning discussion, because we may never see the development permit. So we're representing the community. If we think this is important to the community, now is the time to bring it up. Unless somebody wants to suggest that we all meet on the regarding these before staff have their discussions with the developer, which I'm not going to suggest. Right, that's my comments on this. Oh, one more thing, sorry. As far as Councillor Parkinson's motion goes, I don't see a problem leaving this until the next stage. So I don't see a problem with passing the bylaw. We have a couple more kicks at the cat if we want it. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm listening to all this, but I want to clearly get something straight in my own head right now, Mayor. You asked the fundamental question that was bothering me about this whole thing. I do know that there is that right of way in the back. I think it is actually on the Saunders land. And to me, I just want to make sure I'm clear that that is considered a pedestrian walkway. I didn't really hear the answer to that. I think I sort of did and sort of didn't. I heard we have to confirm, or we don't know, because that's the germane issue to me right now on this whole development. So if it's there, it's a moot point, as Councillor Baxter has said. So I just want to get that clarified right now. If maybe staff could answer that question.
Yeah, I have Mr. Molnar putting up his hand. So Mr. Molnar.
Thank you very much for the mayor to Councillor Kobayashi. I don't wish to make a mistake on that confirmation, Councillor Kobayashi. We will pull the legal title for the land, pull the document, and I will share an email to all of council which outlines the particulars of the use of that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will make final comments, and then I will go to Councillor Parkinson to make his motion. I reflect kind of what Councillor Logan has talked about, that it's important that we focus that this is about land use. And this is about us changing the designation to allow a mixed use employment centers. And I think that's a celebration that we should have. you know, part of our mission has been that we want to create more work. We want to create opportunities for people to work here in Colwood and not have to leave our jurisdiction. And what we're looking at doing is a rezoning that will allow us to accomplish that. And I'm highly excited about that. I think that's great that we have people who are willing to invest into the community and look at new opportunities and bring those opportunities to our community. So saying that, I will look to Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, listening to the comments from my fellow councillors and yourself, Your Worship, absolutely reinforces what I started by saying. That I like this project. It's going to bring jobs. It's going to bring businesses. But there's a whole bunch of things that we're just not clear on. We're bouncing all over the place. You know, is there a walkway to the north, as this report suggests? Is there a potential walkway to the north? I don't know. I don't see one that would be any better. Is there one that runs through the Saunders land? Does it run all the way from Wilford to Island Highway? We don't know that. So, you know, that's why I'm suggesting that the appropriate thing to do is to table this. Let's get the information on the table. And my understanding is when we have things in the OCP that say things like mid-block walkway or build to the front property line, to just shrug them off and say, well, the staff will deal with those at the DP stage or somewhere in the back room later. That's sloughing off our responsibilities. The OCP, I'm not one to hang my hat on every clause or everything in there. I'm going to see it more as a guideline. As I stated earlier, I'm not upset at all about the setback of the buildings from the road. I think that makes sense on this project, and I don't think it's harmful. So there's all sorts of things that we're all coming back in different places. We've all talked around this issue about, well, we think this, we think that. We shouldn't be on a major thing like this, getting a report in front of us, starting with a certain information, getting a few thoughts thrown out in the middle of a meeting and making decisions. Let's table it and let's move forward. So that's my motion. Like
All
to
right.
table this.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Day has seconded it. My understanding, staff, correct me if I'm wrong, that tabling motion is not debatable. It's just I call the question. Confirming, please.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. It should be a motion to defer, and if there is a possible date, that would be good too.
All right.
The
So
next
it is,
council meeting is on January 11th.
okay. Councillor Parkinson, are you wishing
happy to defer to January 11th, Your Worship?
Okay, thank you. And there's no debate on that, correct, staff?
Excuse me, Your Worship. I believe that the deadline for information going to the January 11th meeting is this Friday. There may not be time to get it to that meeting. Amanda, would you please confirm when the target dates are, please?
Sorry, it's Marcy Brent, and yes, that's correct.
So we may have to consider that it goes to the later meeting in January if council wishes that information of fulsome additional information.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Okay,
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just provide a point of order information.
You may in one moment. I just want to confirm with Councillor Parkinson that did you wish to change that motion to the end of January?
Yeah, I have no desire to make people work through the Christmas holidays. The end of January works for me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
Sorry, so the only debate that's permitted on a motion to refer or to table is as to the appropriateness of the motion. So it is appropriate to discuss, you know, when to refer it to and how to get that done. And it is also appropriate to refer it back to staff without a specific date so that they could bring, if they were able to get the report done, they could bring it back. If they can't get it done till the following one, they could bring it to the following one. Thank you.
Thank you. I do appreciate that, and I'm not doubting anything that Councillor Day has said, but I will look to staff to confirm or not confirm. Because I mean, council can say whatever we want. So staff should be giving us the advice. Not that Councillor Day is not giving the proper advice. It's just staff should be giving that advice to us. So staff, do you concur?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, this is Marcy. So a motion to defer is used when council wishes to delay or postpone the discussion on an item until they have more information or more time to debate the item.
Right, and sorry, the issue that I'm trying to address, and Councillor Day has clearly stated that a motion to defer can be discussed. Can I now go to questions for a deferral, or do I need to call the question?
You can go ahead and have discussion.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to clear people's hands. So this is a motion to defer until the end of January. Is there any discussion in regards to this? And I do see the developer wishing to speak as well. So I will give them an opportunity. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat that we get a couple more kicks at this at third reading and fourth and final adoption. And right now, with the lack of information, I think it's okay just to leave it open and do second reading, which I think is what's in front of us. And if anybody thinks that we can't discuss this again at third reading or adoption, I'd like to hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you. I will look to the developer. You were looking to make a comment.
Oh, hello, Mayor and Council. So I just wanted to point out our process in this, and Yasmin and Brent can speak to it if I'm incorrect, but originally we were going to go straight to DP under the existing zoning. Now the reason that we went for the rezone was only and chiefly because of the use provisions within the existing zoning, which did not allow for the breadth of uses that we thought would be appropriate for the property, which I think most of which you would agree with in terms of use. So now we find ourselves in the position in terms of a debate as it relates to rezoning, which we certainly didn't anticipate. And we certainly don't want to go back to a straight DP course, because I suggest then this debate would be based on a change of use rezoning or application on the zoning, which we'd be discussing again. So, I mean, so that's our situation. We to face a delay of a month as it relates to discussing the issue, if you feel it must be done, is fine. But I just wanted to get the background on where this came from in terms of the original rezoning application. So I'll leave it to Yasmin and Brent to confirm that I'm correct in terms of what the original process was.
Great, thank you. Mr. Molnar.
Thank you very much. I can confirm that Brian is correct. When staff were reviewing the initial application and its relevance for development permit, which is very similar to what the debate is we're having here, we did feel that the employment opportunities as an expanded use of uses was beneficial to the city of Colwood. And then working with the applicant, he agreed that those uses should form part of a rezoning package, and we were pleased to bring it forward for council consideration. This site is DP eligible as it stands, though right now, just a limited number of employment opportunity and uses in it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands into discussion on the deferral. So I will call the question. Those in opposition to the deferral, please raise your hands now. I have Councillor Logan, Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Jansen, and Mayor Martin. So that fails. Do I have a do I have anyone interested in moving the recommendation from committee of the whole? Councillor Logan.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion that is moved from the committee of the whole, that has been seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion. Councillor Logan, you're the mover. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's self-explanatory, and I appreciated the developer's explanation, and it tells me that we are actually further ahead with the rezoning, and we wouldn't have gotten the setback or the frontage sorry, I'm lost my train of thought, but our pedestrian access and moving the buildings up under the DP, and we wouldn't have a development that is as good as what is envisioned in the zoning. So I appreciated that clarification.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands for discussion. I'm just waiting a moment if anyone else wishes to discuss. Seeing none. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just felt that I should be clear that unfortunately, the way this is coming forward, I will not be able to support it. I wanted to be able to support it. If I had more clarity from staff, perhaps I would have been able to support it. And I do take Councillor Baxter's point that changes could be made further down the road. I'm just very dissatisfied with the process here tonight.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So I will call the question. Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Parkinson, you're muted.
Pulled to Michael, sorry about that. I just want to echo agreement with everything Councillor Day said, frustrated a little bit here. But as I said all along, you know, I like this development. It's going to bring some good things. So I will support first and second reading in hopes that Mr. Baxter is correct and we can make any appropriate amendments needed later in the process.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 7.5, I believe. Yeah, 7.5. This is 201 Goldfinch Road. This is a development variance permit application, DVP 20-008 and sub 20-008. There is a recommendation from the December 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. I have Councillor Logan, who is willing to move the recommendation. I'm assuming, Councillor Logan, is that what your hand was up for?
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Jansen. I'm going to clear people's hands. Discussion. Again, I'll give the mover the opportunity to speak first. Councillor Logan, do you wish to comment? Nope.
No, I don't. No.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to comment? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 7.6. This is Jill Collington, our senior planner, and Kate Evans from LANARC, Parks and Recs Master Plan Update Phase 2. Ms. Collington, would you like to provide a brief introduction of Kate and provide the presentation?
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Worship. So you may recall that Kate and myself checked in with you about 3 or 4 months ago at the end of Phase 1 of the Parks and Rec Master Plan. Well, now we're at the end of Phase 2. So during Phase 2, emerging directions for the plan, visions, and goals and improvement projects were brought forward to the community for review and refinement. This phase provided an opportunity to check in with what we'd heard from the first round of public engagement, as well as to draft project ideas and identify anything we might have missed and to help understand priorities. So the corresponding presentation by Kate offers an overview of this Phase 2 engagement, summarizes the questionnaire feedback, and provides a snapshot of what's to come. There's also an attachment provided tonight as part of the agenda package that is the entirety of the Phase 2 engagement summary. So I will turn it over to Kate.
Great, thank you, Jill, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to take a moment here to share the presentation. And one moment, I'm just switching the which screen is which. There we go. So thank you. I'm delighted to.
Sorry, Kate. I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes.
Before you made that final.
It was correct.
It was full screen, and now it's small screen, and we see your notes. Oh,
and how about now?
There. That's perfect.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Mayor. So I'm delighted to present our last update for the year for our Parks Call with the city's Parks and Recreation Master Plan process. And so I'll begin just with a very brief overview, a check-in for where we're at in the process overall, following on from Jill. And my focus will be on sharing the Phase 2 community engagement and feedback. And then I'll touch to close on the final steps and timeline that are anticipated for the new year. So where are we now? We are in Phase 3, and we are drafting the master plan, working towards the plan review and finalization in 2021. And we started out broadly at the outside of the target here, and we've been working our way in, focusing our efforts as we go in each phase and building on the phases previous. The image here is maybe a little bit familiar now. It's come up a few times over the last 6 months, and it just shows the linear process, the core 3 phases, and we're now at the right-hand side, bridging between Phase 2 and 3. We're in development of the master plan, and we're doing a check-in here with council just as we head into a small break, so that we're kind of prepped and ready as we come back to things in 2021. And so on to the focus for the evening for me is just checking in on the key outcomes, findings, and summary of what was carried out in terms of engagement and feedback in Phase 2. And this window was targeted throughout the month of October as far as the public-facing side of the process. So we heard, in terms of a snapshot, in Phase 2, we heard from 259 participants for the survey. There were over 3,000 visits to the project website and over 7,000 postcards sent out to individual residences. So in all 3 folds, we kind of upped our level of outreach and received higher numbers of engagement as it came back, which was a really great goal for us, because Phase 2 gets a little bit more difficult in terms of information, level of review and input, but we were able to increase the participation. So overall, we were seeing that as a success. And overall, there was a fairly strong degree of support for the draft ideas presented. Of course, new ideas and refinements were brought forward, but overall, there was support for how things were drafted and presented in idea form. And so community engagement is very core to the process, and in order to engage people to participate, outreach is really the first and fundamental step. So the next few slides, I'm just going to share what was done in terms of outreach in order to garner that engagement. And as in Phase 1, outreach for Phase 2 was balanced across 3 main platforms: digital tools, print tools, and word of mouth and referrals. And it's really the combination and overlaps between these 3 that was used to reach the community as broadly as possible. And so firstly, digital tools. The digital outreach here was a refinement of the tools that we were able to achieve the most positive feedback and success on in Phase 1 and in other processes at the city over the last 6 months and year. And so there was an emphasis on digital tools in this phase, both because of their demonstrated effectiveness and flexibility for the community, as well as their suitability for adapting and engaging during COVID-19 restrictions and response. In the interest of time, I won't speak to each of the points, the individual items that are up here, but I'm happy to answer any questions that may follow. So for print tools and outreach, of course, many do not interact online. And so we developed several ways of communicating and reaching out to the community to participate and to let them know about the second phase of this process in other ways. And so again, we built on the successes from the earlier phase of work and focused on those. And so a couple of key points just to draw forward for Phase 2 were that there was a series of postcards mailed out to 7,000 residents throughout the city. And then in addition to the postcards, there was additional targeted drop-offs of materials made to senior residences, low-income housing, and multifamily housing locations in the city. And these efforts were made to try and fill some gaps and to reach the community as broadly as possible, knowing that we were not going to be going to them at community events or other opportunities which we would have otherwise pursued at a different point. And so the final platform for outreach was for word of mouth and referrals. And the intention there is to expand the network of the project team by connecting with other established messengers in the community. And so to kick it off, we met and presented at the last council meeting in the month of September. And that was just prior to the public launch of Phase 2, so the round 2 public engagement. And so that started us a little bit on the opportunity to spread the word. And in Phase 2, as with earlier in the process, staff and the project team also reached out directly to local First Nations, community ambassadors, organizations, and neighboring municipalities in order to both share the current project update of Phase 2 and to invite feedback. So to conclude the summary of outreach from phase 2, this graph just visualizes the ways participants indicated they were actually reached. And so the couple of key takeaways that I will highlight here are: many participants did indicate that they were made aware of the process in more than one way, which is in our minds ideal. If the first one didn't spur them to action, then hearing more than once often does. And then both digital and non-digital outreach methods were part of the success in reaching people. And so overall, it was the combination of outreach efforts that provided the level of participation and feedback that we did receive in phase 2. And so now that I've shared a little bit on how we reached people in this phase, I'll share highlights from who we heard from, and then of course, maybe the most important, what we heard. So to begin with, a brief touch on demographics information, as this helps to ground us to understand how representative the respondents in phase 2 of this process were to the city overall. And so similar to phase 1, we heard from a representative portion of the population 45 and older, but youth and young adults under the age of 24 were not well represented. This is not uncommon for a process like this, and there were some added pressures this fall in terms of classroom or school district ability for us to kind of dovetail just with all of the things that were being managed. And so that is the kind of point of diversion from representing the participation in this process versus the community's demographics. But a point to relate to that a little bit is the flip side is the adults aged 25 to 45 are kind of overrepresented compared to the overall demographic when we look at it as a structure to 100%. And the related point there is that this age category does help to represent family input, which indirectly helps to bring forward some interests and concerns of children and youth, in particular under the age of 18. So overall, even though there's not an exact match of the respondents in phase 2, there is a fairly good level of balance in order to kind of address and reach the different ages throughout the community. And so as a supplement to age demographics, these 3 graphs just show some secondary information about who we heard from. So there was a balance between men and women, a little bit better of a balance actually than in the first phase, and just under half the participants indicated that they represent families in their household or having children living at home. And of these, the majority were families with children ages 6 to 12 years old. And in terms of where the respondents live, about 74% or about 3/4 of the respondents were City of Colwood residents, and the neighborhoods that were represented most strongly were Royal Bay, Seaside, and Triangle Mountain. So the key related note there is that there was a higher portion of residents from outside the City of Colwood in phase 2, so around 26% or just over 1/4 of the total. So that's the gray portion of the graph. And to help further understand that, we asked other details within the survey about who is participating to understand some additional questions about their relationship or interest in the City of Colwood. And this information clarified that most of the respondents that did not have a residential address in the city were connected with a special interest group or organization to Parks and Rec in Colwood. So for example, West Shore Parks and Recreation, or they had a regular relationship to Colwood where they worked here or owned a business here, or lastly, they had a specific interest as a neighbor and visitor to the city, with the 2 most common interests being the waterfront and the potential for a disc golf course in the region as something that came up more strongly in this phase. So finally, on who we heard from, 2/3 of the participants have lived in Colwood for 5 years or more, and then 1/3 were newer to the community, having lived in the city for 5 years or less. And so overall, in this phase, we achieved participation from across age groups, genders, and neighborhood areas. And knowing a little bit further of those details and who we heard from is an important lens that we brought forward in reviewing and considering the data and the plan development. So the last series of slides here are the high-level summary of themes, priorities, and outcomes from the process to date. And so they're kind of the very short version of what is materializing in the recommendations and strategic actions. And so the 6 overarching themes are natural environment, climate change, walkability and active transportation, partnerships, managing growth, and inclusion and accessibility. And so these themes are presented in all levels of the draft master plan, from the vision to goals to strategic actions. And these themes identified in this process resonate quite strongly to the city's current OCP and major planning initiatives. So a lot of alignment there. And the 5 priority areas or projects that were identified by community feedback are the future Royal Beach Waterfront Community Park, a community waterfront route. So that's related to the multi-use pathway and connecting throughout from the existing peninsula through Royal Beach, etc. Peninsula waterfront improvements themselves, neighborhood playgrounds, and walking and cycling connections or active transportation routes as another way of looking at it. And closely related to the overarching themes and priority ideas are the following, which is a brief list of key objectives which guide the draft plan recommendations and strategic actions. So to protect and enhance the environment and natural areas, to maintain the current level of access to green space alongside population growth, to improve connections between existing parks and trails as well as future ones, to develop pedestrian and cyclist routes or active transportation routes, improve access to neighborhood scale parks and playgrounds, and to provide additional community park space and outdoor recreation facilities for broad use, gathering, events, etc. So throughout phase 2 and really the entire process to date, certain areas were repeatedly highlighted as priorities for attention. And so the following is a short list of the areas that serve the community-wide interests. There are additional ideas that are presented in the plan there that are more localized or neighborhood specific in scale. And so at the community-wide level, the top of the list is the community waterfront, which is not a surprise, and then Colwood Creek Park, Ocean View Park, Herm Williams Park, Lookout Lake Park, Royal Beach and Royal Bay Parks and Recreation Development, which is partially in motion with the first phases and is under readings and development as we speak. Latoria Creek Park, Havenwood Park, Pithouse Park, and Royal Roads Forest. And the majority of the items on this list are also the primary candidates for development of park management plans, which is a carry-on process after the overall master plan. And there's a draft terms of reference that are being produced as part of this process to guide those future initiatives. So in addition to overall more location-specific priorities, there were top items identified for new outdoor amenities for the community, in some cases upgrades or new locations. And in many cases, these amenities were considerations for multiple locations. And so the priorities are for park washrooms, neighborhood playgrounds, nature play areas, destination inclusive playground, off-leash dog areas, covered picnic or gathering structures, skate park, bike pump track and or skills park, basketball courts, pickleball courts, tennis courts, and disc golf. Indoor amenities priorities that were identified as additional community center location, additional weight room or workout space, and upgrades or additions for multi-purpose space to serve fitness studio, interest classes, cultural or arts center functions, and youth center functions. And so the community feedback gathered through the process has provided both quantitative and qualitative data to help frame the what, as well as understand the why as a key piece of forming the directions for the draft master plan. And the overall methodology for drafting the master plan is a combined approach where community feedback is considered in concert with the community inventory and quantitative analysis, local trends and research, and comparison metrics and targets. And so it really is the combination of these components that provides for recommendations and strategic actions that are balanced and context specific. So each element on its own does present some limitations, but when used in concert with one another, it helps to produce a more balanced and more structured outcome. So using the multiple pillars, I guess, as a way of looking at it is a way to strengthen the overall plan as well as its individual parts. And so the key points for next steps on our horizon and the final phases of the process include we're continuing to work to polish the draft plan internally with sessions with staff and the project team through December. And then we'll be looking towards phase 3, the plan review process, which includes a series of stages with council, key stakeholders and organizations and the broader community. And so finalization of the plan with council is targeted for early spring new year. And then in closing, just wanted to kind of highlight that we have received quality feedback and involvement from the community through phase 1 and 2, which has in turn provided us with a solid foundation for drafting the master plan. And as we work through the current pandemic, I think the roles of Parks and Recreation have perhaps never been more apparent or important in our communities, either because of the lack of some services available at the moment and therefore emphasis on others. And we look forward to working through the final phase of the process with council and the community in 2021 to plan for a bright future for Parks and Recreation for the City of Colwood over the next 10 years and beyond. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to look for a motion to receive, and then I'll go to questions. Councillor Day, I'm going to assume, is making the motion to receive. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Kobayashi, thank you. Councillor Day, as the mover, I will allow you to go questions first.
Okay, thank you. I guess my biggest question when reading through the presentation ahead of time was really to wonder why managing growth was such a big question in the parks. So I guess, you know, parks are kind of reactive to what's around them. So why was that high on the list?
So through the chair, I can speak to that briefly, and maybe it's just the lens that was included. It was one of the largest concerns that we heard from residents in the city, as well as from neighboring municipalities, was that the pressure that growth puts on the existing system and the need to have a vision and outline and tools for staff in the city to use in order to maintain a kind of level of service or function that exists for residents today, looking forward to the growth that's projected over, you know, kind of to 2038 or approximately in that range, the potential for doubling the population, and therefore having a strategic plan of how to bring along the Parks and Recreation network in order to support that. So that was, I think, in a couple sentences, that's the summary.
Thank you. So, and it also appears that about 25% of the respondents were non-residents. Did you have a parameter where, you know, at what point in time would that be too many non-residents?
Really, because the process for who was able to respond was open, they just needed to be someone registered for the Let's Talk Colwood platform in the case of the online service, or to respond to one of the hard copies if they requested it and were able to respond in that way. And so at the input level, there would never actually be a limitation on how that information came in, but we would review it and consider there's ability to look at the results for individual questions as both residents of Colwood and outside. And so we were able to analyze specific questions to understand if there was a significant difference between who we were hearing from regionally versus from inside the city. And so I alluded a little bit to the people that we did hear from were people who did not have a residential address in the city, but very often we're using Parks and Recreation services that are within the city of Colwood, or in many circumstances within West Shore Parks and Recreation, which is indeed a more regional, it's a collective facility as opposed to just the city of Colwood's. So we were able to identify both more neighborhood specific interests, which are focused on residents of the city, as well as some of the kind of higher level interest points, waterfront, et cetera, are not surprisingly of interest beyond the city limits and their regional interest. And so there is actually value in receiving some of that input that is not from, even though technically it's not City of Colwood resident taxpayers, some of those individuals indicated they work in the city, own businesses, et cetera. So it's a matter of some of the individual questions, looking at if there was a significant difference between respondents that are residents or property owners or not.
Okay, thank you. I think every municipality is feeling that pressure. I know we've received a letter from the District of Metchosin about increased pressure on their parks because they're finding more, you know, everyone's trying to find outdoor spaces to visit in. So I know that that's something that we share with all our neighbors. We're all feeling that pressure. And I wanted to let you know also that the Inter-Municipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues received their package too late to participate in the survey, as did my own household. I don't know if it was Canada Post issue or what, but I don't know if there are additional opportunities or if you're, already too far down the road, but they are a very important, I think, demographic to try to reach out to, because they are reaching themselves out to a lot of vulnerable populations who may be underrepresented. Is there any further opportunities to provide input?
So through the chair, I'll comment briefly, and then I might refer briefly just to Jill Collinson as well. There is phase 3, the round of input. So we'll be referring, the plan will be draft at that point, and it'll be referred to, there'll be a process that includes council, includes some of the neighboring municipalities and organizations, as well as the general public. And so there is certainly one final stage to kind of come back with the draft plan, look for any comments or concerns, and to incorporate those revisions as part of the finalization process. I know we did receive an email directly from the committee, and we welcomed input past the date. And so I was just going to look to Jill. She might remember more specific details there, or maybe it's not necessary, but we did have contact with the committee, and we're aware that they wanted more time in order to respond.
I can just confirm exactly what Kate just mentioned, that for parties that reached out to say they'd like to comment, but there was, it was beyond the October 31st deadline. We did provide an additional 3-week window in which they could provide either a copy of the survey or even just an email if they had any additional comments or concern. And then, as Kate mentioned, there will be the public referral of the actual draft document in 2021, where there's additional consideration for everyone to offer in comment.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate that. I just wanted, I have only 2 more points, and that is about not hearing so much from youth, especially teens, in the survey. And I think that I may be able to provide some contacts within the school district who would be able to help you with that. And I certainly have some ideas for ways that we may be able to reach more non-traditional youth resources. And also, I would like to, I'm not sure where goals will come into your planning, but I would really like to see some actual accessibility goals for our parks, because we have worked very hard now for more than 10 years on accessibility throughout the capital region, and especially in the West Shore. And it all started at West Shore Parks and Rec with a lot of help from their staff. So I think we have some great people that we could tap into. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through the chair, just a couple quick questions, Kate. I still didn't understand this 70 to 95% support. I don't understand what that means. Like, I'm still scratching my head. I thought when I pre-looked at the presentation, I thought you'd explain this, but but you didn't really. And you're such a good storyteller too. So if you could answer that question, it's my first question. And I was just going to ask if that relates to your priority ideas, if that correlation, if it was 95% support, it made the priority ideas. The second question I have for you is just the social media. Did this whole initiative have its own Facebook page? Like, when you say social media, I don't understand what that was. Is that the Colwood Community Association? Is it Facebook, you know, your own Facebook page or whatever? The next comment I'm going to make, and it maybe could answer Councillor Day's question. She made a valid point, but you know, I walk the parks almost every day religiously. Well, at least 5 days a week, and it's interesting. The demographic that you see walking and using our parks is actually reflective of the people, how they responded. You don't see a lot of teens in the parks, right? But you know, it's interesting that that's what I see, anyways, personally. And my last comment is, you know, is when you call the priority locations, we do make this. You make this reference to Royal Road Forest, which I think is a treasure here in Colwood. Unfortunately, we don't own it, so I just wonder if you can comment on that. Like, why is that a priority when we have no say on what happens there? In fact, if we try to say anything, we get stamped down pretty quickly. Anyways, Kate, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, through the chair, thank you very much. Councillor Kobayashi, I'll try and go in order if I've jotted them down. So yes, the 70 to 95%, very good question. There is a little bit of further information in the report that was appended, but the two don't relate clearly, so I'll help to clarify. In order to make the kind of new ideas or the core ideas that we were drafting in terms of direction to get public feedback, reframe them as ideas. And there were 24 of them. And so amongst the 24 ideas, there was a range in support from 70% to 95%. So there was support for each and every one, actually, and the majority of support. Some of the waterfront ones and the ones that ended up being the top 5 were more like the 90 or 95% support, and at the lowest, about 70%. So overall, quite strong support even at the low end. So hopefully that is helpful. And then in terms of social media, primarily we were using existing City of Colwood platforms. So through the existing Facebook page, Twitter account, and Instagram account. So Sandra Russell, the communications wonderful magic worker at the city, we teamed with her in order to develop the strategy and the messaging, and she was key to implementing that. So we used all the existing platforms so that people who were already following the city, et cetera, who were already included in that kind of audience were the people who saw that information for the most part. And then for your last question, so I jotted down the first two. Can you refresh me on the last one?
It just had to do with the Royal Roads Forest.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. For the City of Colwood, so Royal Roads Forest is a very good example, and there's several components. When we look at the Parks and Recreation system as a whole, most of the city residents and visitors don't see the jurisdictional boundaries. Of course, the primary recommendations in this plan are specific to the City of Colwood parklands that are owned by the city, but it would be negligent of us to not mention or address the adjacencies that are considered so valuable, and also for the public to reflect what we heard. And so we very strongly heard about, very similar to your heartfelt comment about Royal Roads Forest, of how important it is, and knowing that there are current discussions kind of in play about the future of that space. And so just wanting to, we don't have any recommendations. We would not presume to advise what happens on those lands, knowing that there's process that's happening otherwise to do with all of the different stakeholders there, but just acknowledging its importance, I suppose, and what we heard from feedback is more so how it's represented here.
Thank you very much, Kate.
No problem. Thank you.
Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Kate, for your report. I was surprised actually in part 3, which is the outdoor recreational facilities, and that's page 28. So question 16 was level of satisfaction with the number of public outdoor recreational facilities. And I wonder if we had the right target audience for that. And, you know, I say that because when I look at, you know, rounding up, say 90%, 80, 90% satisfaction rate for turf fields and lacrosse. And I'm thinking, that's not right. You know, like if you went and talked to, if there was a service provider or one of the service clubs that was asked versus somebody walking their dog that hasn't played a lick of soccer in their life, they'd be like, yeah, we've got lots of fields, we're fine. But if you talk to a parent, then they're like, no, we need more fields or more recreational facilities. So I just wonder about that graph and whether we just connected with the right people.
Through the chair, yeah, I can offer a couple of brief comments to that, and I definitely appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Logan. One important consideration on that graph, there was one additional option that was basically NA, like this doesn't really apply to me. I don't use the grass soccer fields, and so I'd probably say, yeah, I'm satisfied, or a neutral because for lack of anything else. So what we've represented there is for the people who use the facility and care about it, what they say. But somewhat surprisingly, as you're saying, for you, is that if we are just looking at the people who use it as opposed to the people who don't, that the level of satisfaction from the respondents that we heard from is quite high. We have actually had follow-on conversations with staff and others about a draft recommendation specific to fields, which, and this goes back to my slide on all of the components that are used in concert, in that there are some circumstances where we lean more heavily on one aspect than another. We look at other input that's been received more broadly. We looked to Langford. They engaged specifically with a lot of these user groups that are part of West Shore Parks and Recreation, and we took that, and they did it recently. So instead of duplicating that effort, we took that information into consideration. And so we are working to draft a recommendation that is specific to athletic fields. And if we just looked at community input from phase 2, from the respondents we heard from, that might not be necessary. But when we look at the full picture of input from stakeholder groups, and when we look at the other work that we did in terms of comparative communities and the broader picture of components that we're looking at, then we do have a recommendation that has to do with that. So that may be helpful to know.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much, Kate. And okay. I guess my other question, and I'm not sure who this would be directed to, but I'm looking at the opportunity with the site preparation work that's happening in Royal Bay South, and we've got a piece of land that will be prepped for synthetic field, as I understand it. But there's a real opportunity to work with the school district to realize a more robust facility that both the school district can use and the community can use. And we can utilize the developer in the site preparation that's going on right now. And I just want to make sure we don't lose that opportunity to create some synergies, with that opportunity. So, I'm not sure about the timing, whether this would kind of jive, or if we should be having some sort of conversation about that particular opportunity kind of outside of this process to create a more robust set of recreational facilities. I don't know, Kate, if you wanted to answer that, or Brent as the director, or Jill.
Without seeing through the chair, without seeing someone else spring forward, I will comment to say that we have recognized the school district, the confirmation of the land in the south, Royal Bay development, and the confirmation of that parcel with the school district, and also building on the partnership and recreation facilities that are part of the secondary school. There's a recommendation in this plan that relates to that. As far as the acute timeline that it sounds like you're speaking about in terms of active works, I can't comment further on that. And so I see now that Brent does have his hand up. So
yeah, thank you.
I'll leave my side from there.
Thanks, Kate.
I see Mr. Molnar and Ms. Collinson would like to comment. Either one of you.
I don't mind going first. This is an exciting opportunity to take the information from this plan and apply it to the considerations. The field at question right now is intended to be a grass field. However, discussions have not evolved with the school district, and they are, as you know, zoned with the Royal Bay. So this is certainly the time to gather this information and open those discussions. Thanks for the feedback you're providing.
Through Mr. Chair, we throughout this process we have been involved with the school district. They've been a key stakeholder from the get-go, and are continuing to be as we move forward. We have been contacted with the trustee level as well as facilities level. So it is something that we are jointly working towards, recognizing that there is future partnership opportunities for the city with the school board, and I believe will be optioned as a recommendation coming forward in the draft plan.
Great, thank you. Councillor Logan, do you have anything else?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I guess just to follow up on that, Jill, then depending on what the conversations are, are there conversations with Royal Bay as an example, or Gablecraft, who is doing some site preparation work for Latoria South, that should we decide to go with an all-weather field or some other facility, that they can grade it appropriately now, and then we can construct it later, as opposed to having to go back and regrade and re-prep the site?
So through Mr. Chair, at this point, that level of detail, no. This has been more about developing considerations and plan recommendations and checking through the survey and such like that. But as Mr. Molnar mentioned, and as you are noting, it is perhaps an opportune time to work together to consider some of those things.
Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
I have a question on what this the survey was meant to include. So was it intended that it would gather opinions on arts and culture? Because I see arts and culture are mentioned a couple of times in the document. But was that an intent? And was there an intent to cover recreation opportunities for those with mobility issues?
So through the chair, I can speak to that initially. The focus of the plan was for parks and recreation, and not specifically for arts and culture. However, they are in some ways often linked, especially when we start to look at indoor recreation facilities. And so seeing it in the plan document here is an honest reflection of the feedback that we heard. And so for some, they see this as an opportunity to have multi-purpose space, or they are further communicating where there are gaps in areas that are related, but perhaps slightly adjacent to the focus of this plan. And so it's a little bit similar to the circumstance for Royal Roads, et cetera, where we are acknowledging where those comments and trends surfaced, and if they surface more significantly, so that can be a contribution just generally for council and the city to know carrying forward. But the focus of the plan recommendations are not for cultural and arts facilities, although there is acknowledgement where there are synergies with some of the proposals that are of more direct relationship to recreation.
And on mobility issues?
Yes, so there is, and this is somewhat related to what Councillor Day was mentioning as well. Within the plan structure currently, there are a few series of recommendations. One is capital recommendation focused, and there are another that are policy recommendation focused. And accessibility is one of those. And so the intention of it being a more policy recommendation is that it has some application to several of the other recommendations. And so there are specific actions within that policy recommendation, but there's also a linkage from there to several of the other items within the document. And so a component of that is looking at continuing forward with some efforts, or going beyond the indoor facilities and looking at accessibility and audits. And there's consideration within the draft terms of reference that we've prepared for the management plans moving forward for that to be a key component for those locations, and some guidance on where the priorities are first, knowing that everything can't be done at once, and looking at the waterfront and some of those key community facilities first, and then kind of working the way through the system.
Thank you. Given that reply, I think we should probably, in the many illustrations in the documents we produce, include people with mobility issues at some point. I know we had this problem with the first draft of the OCP, and had to insert some suitable pictures. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would just like to move receipt of this presentation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I already have that motion, so I will take it that you are asking to call the question, which I'm happy to do. I will call the question now. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. We are going to recess for 5 minutes. I'm looking, and I'm going to be really strict on this. It's 8:28 by my clock. I am coming back at 8:33, so you have exactly 5 minutes. So take a break, council, and we will see everybody back in exactly 5 minutes. Okay, it is 8:33. And they do look like I have quorum. Looks like I got 4 of us back at least. I'll give it 30 more seconds for people to come back, but I'm not going to wait significantly longer because we're going to be here close to 10 anyways with this agenda. So here's Michael. Councillor Logan, Councillor Day, can you please come back? Thank you, Councillor Logan. Okay, I've got 8:34 now on my phone, so I am going to start. So I'm going to bring us all back, please. We are now on to 7.8. This is Jen Hempting, our Director of Finance, regarding a COVID-19 Safe Restart grant funding request from West Shore Park and Rec's 2021 pool reopening. Oh, and I see a hand of Mr. Earl.
What happened to 7.7?
Happened, yeah.
Is that what Mr. Earl's probably telling me too? What's happened? Allow me to explain, Councillor Jansen. I missed it. That's what happens. So we'll go back. So we're now on to 7.7. Thank you for correcting me. Jill Collingson, our senior planner, regarding our housing needs report. This is inclusion of committee recommendations. Ms. Collingson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So last time the draft housing needs report was before you, there was a request for a Colwood-specific addendum to be included, outlining where the city expects to be on housing stock. So to incorporate this, at the end of section 3.9, which is page 40 of the document, but at page 143 in your agenda package, there's a new heading titled Overview and Projections, which summarizes total number of dwelling units in Colwood to date, offers projections and trends. There also has been included a 3-page profile summary at the front end of the housing needs report, which is page 97, or sorry, 101 of the agenda to 104. So that was all I had, but I'm available for questions.
Excellent. I will, this report just needs to be received, so I will look for that motion first, and then I will go to questions. Councillor Jansen has moved it. Councillor Day has seconded it. Councillor Jansen, do you have any comments or questions? Councillor Day is the seconder.
Thank you. The one thing that isn't really, I mean, it's mentioned a couple places, but it really didn't get a lot of emphasis, is the need for youth housing in the West Shore. There are very few opportunities for youth housing throughout the CRD, and it has been a major focus of the chair of the CRAT committee, which is the Capital Region Action Team for Sexually Exploited Youth, as well as the subject of numerous articles in the Goldstream Gazette about the lack of availability. There's no emergency shelters, etc. Is that something that will make its way towards getting more of a profile in the future, or is that something that I need to address now?
Through the chair. So what's included within the housing needs report is part of the legislated requirement to report on. What the city is intending to do with this document is move this towards an OCP amendment in the future related to updating the housing section of the official community plan. So we can look to include additional information specific to that item when we move forward on that in, starting in 2021.
Yeah, so the reason I bring that up is just that the statistics post-COVID are very high for increase in family violence and difficulties. And when youth get kicked out of home here in the West Shore, there's no place in the West Shore for them to go.
Mr. Borhill, did you wish to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that the OCP amendments that would be forthcoming, as noted by our senior planner, will not be addressing specific gaps in our community as it relates to emergency youth housing. That would be an issue that we'd want to address if council was desirous through a separate action.
Sorry, could I get a little more information, Mr. Chair, on what sort of an action is envisioned?
Through the chair, if I understand the question, it was about current needs as they relate to youth housing and youth at risk specifically. The housing needs assessment, as was addressed by our senior planner, is really looking at the long-term trajectory of our housing in the community. It's not meant to address emergent needs such as what was highlighted just now. That would be something that would be tackled through a separate initiative where we would be looking to see what's in the community through an inventory of social services, and then potentially looking at where the gaps exist and how potentially the municipality could create options to fill those gaps with other service providers.
Okay, I guess I'm just having trouble. I'm looking at page 103. It's talking about affordable housing, rental housing, housing for people with disabilities, and homelessness. This is not where we're going to talk about homelessness?
It will not address specific actions that would provide for the specialized type of housing that we're talking about when we invoke at-risk youth. These are things that would have to happen through subsequent actions, such as a social services inventory, and, as I said, a development of options to actually specifically target the creation of beds or housing if that was what was uncovered to be the case in terms of need.
Okay, so I just think that I guess I'm very frustrated because this is talking about key areas of local need and then completely dropping the ball. So I think we should at least say we don't have any youth housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I see Ms. Collingson. Are you attempting to speak, or can I move on to my next counselor?
You can move on.
Thank you. And I saw that Councillor Jensen has lowered his hand, so I'm assuming he doesn't have any comments. So, and I'm not seeing any other hands. So I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. This is just a motion to receive. Councillor Day opposes. Okay, moving on to 7.8 now. This is Jen Hempting, our Director of Finance, regarding the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant funding request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you'd mentioned earlier this evening, the city has received just shy of $3.5 million in provincial grant funding to support various operational impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. What you have before you tonight is a request from the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society seeking some of this grant funding for purposes of reopening the Wanda Fuca pool facility next month. And the Society is seeking Council's decision tonight in an effort to ensure that the funding is secured to begin the necessary rehiring and training of staff in anticipation of the reopening next month. And I would like to note that we do have West Shore Parks and Rec Society staff in attendance tonight to answer any questions you may have. And there is a recommendation before you tonight. And I am also here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson. Oh, Councillor Parkinson, you're muted.
Gosh. I'm as old as Michael was last year, so I guess that's where I'm getting the habits from. Anyhow, excuse me. I'll be happy to move the recommendation, and if there's a seconder, I'll be happy to motivate.
Okay, I've got 3 hands, so hold on 2 seconds. I'm just gonna, so they don't lose their line name. I'm gonna clear. Can somebody raise their hand if they wish to second? Councillor Kobayashi has seconded it. Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkinson, do you wish to make any comments?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just would like to sort of stress the importance of this. The pool is the most used facility we have. Typically, about 70% of the residents would use the pool on an occasion during the year. Having it closed is obviously detrimental to everybody's mental health as we go through this. The other pools in the area that have opened have sort of sold out everything they could do within the first hour or 2 that they've been open. It's a very popular thing. As Jen had mentioned, there was that money from the federal and provincial governments for COVID-related issues. This would certainly fit that bill 100%. The other communities in the region have used their funds for very similar purposes. I can tell you, everybody, tonight that this approval on the pro rata share of the costs has been approved by Langford, Highlands, and View Royal so far. We'll be going to the chosen council tonight as well as ours. So hopefully we will be able to move this forward and look to opening the pool and getting some people back in there in the new year. Thank you.
Great. I will go to the seconder. Councillor Kobayashi, did you wish to make any comments?
I just want to agree with Councillor Parkinson on this. Even with the upcoming requisitions in January for the reopening of the other portions of West Shore Parks and Rec, that the total is only 12.2% of the total monies that have been allocated. So that's good value, especially during these times. This is our only escape. So, you know, even we've got some further ones coming up in January if you've read the appendixes to it. So I think it's great value, and so I just want to support it. I do have one quick question for Jen, though, through the chair. It just has to do with, are we allowed to backdate? You know, because we've spent some money on some of these other items, these priorities that the government has lined up. Are we allowed to backdate for some of the monies that we've already spent towards this COVID relief?
Thank you, through the chair. We are exploring that right now. We also have other funding in addition to this grant funding, or I should say other recoveries in addition to this grant funding that we are exploring right now. And we will be bringing that information forward during budget deliberations for council's consideration.
Thanks very much, Jen.
I will go to Councillor Jansen next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think a couple of my questions have been answered. One about how this fits in, and it's been approved across the region here, which sounds like it's well on its way. I'm assuming this meets all the guidelines, which is why we're here. But I had a question. Has the West Shore Parks and Rec not applied for some of their own sources of funding and grant opportunities? I'm not sure if that's a question Stuart can answer, or staff, or what.
Stuart, yeah, Councillor Parkinson is our board representative, so I will look to him, or he can refer it to, I think Grant's also on the line.
Yeah, Grant's around. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, we have explored grant funding. One of the issues was that the wage top-ups were, the West Shore Parks and Rec was ineligible for the wage top-ups because it's a society owned by 5 municipalities. So that one fell through, but there's certainly a lot of grants. They're looking at grants for skateboard parks, and they're actually pretty proficient at finding and chasing grants. So I think you can be satisfied there.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Parkinson.
If it's okay, I don't want to cut anybody off, but actually Doug's point was one that I should have addressed further. That you will see in the information in front of you that there's a bunch of other things, activities that have been curtailed to try to match costs with revenues over the last year, that the board and the staff would be like to bring back. We just decided that it was important to try to get the pool opening at the beginning of the year, and we'd take a little more time to really look at the other options for park programs and the like, to try to stretch those dollars as far as we can. But absolutely, there will be another supplemental request coming back once we've decided exactly what are the right programs to bring for whom. So I shouldn't be deceptive about that at all. I want people to know that in the near future, we'll be coming back forth another ask.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry to butt in.
No, that's all great information. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to go through my questions, and these are questions that are going to be more appropriate for staff to answer, probably Grant. First of all, can you tell me what are the number of participants that used the pool in 2019 before pre-COVID?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have the exact stats in front of me for 2019, but we would average about 600 to 700 people per day through the pool.
Okay, and and it is my understanding that the West Shore Park and Rec pool is probably the single entity that is the most subsidized of all the things that we do at West Shore Park and Rec. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So at 600 participants per day, what was our subsidy to that? What was it costing us per person?
Per person, it was around $8 per person.
Okay, thank you. So my second question is now post-COVID and looking at 2021 and what we're going to be doing. How many participants are we anticipating per day?
All we're allowed in per session is 50, and we'll be running 8 to 10 sessions per day. So we'll be getting similar numbers from the drop-in side of it, but when you look at the lessons and so on is where this far reduction is.
Okay, and so what is our anticipated subsidy per person post-COVID? If it's $8 pre-COVID, what will it be post?
It's probably going to double, close to double, because our costs don't reduce. We just drop our number of the number of people we can put through, so it'd be $16 to $18 per person.
Okay, thank you. So I sadly, and I understand where Councillor Parkinson is advocating for, I have a real difficulty subsidizing a participant using the pool and it costing me, the taxpayer, the city, $16 every time somebody uses that pool. That seems a very high subsidy to be providing. When I look at, so for example, we are looking at an additional $690,000 to open this pool for 2021. And I know we have struggled for years, for example, to get a skateboard park. We have seen an escalation in the skateboard park going from $700,000 to a construction where it's increasing close to 20% a year. I think we're over $1 million now to build the exact same skateboard park. If we took that $690,000 that the 5 municipalities were willing to invest into opening up the pool for 2021, and we invested that into an infrastructure that would be the skateboard park that could last for the next 25 to 30 years, I think that's a far better investment than it would be to looking at opening up the pool short term. Saying that as well, I understand that there are subsidies and that this might not qualify under the COVID-19 numbers. I'm not suggesting that it does, but I want to be very clear that when we talk about $146,000, that is a 1% lift. That's how much that costs us. If we choose to take that money and subsidize it through West Shore Park and Rec and give this $146,000 out of our $3.6 million of COVID money and say it's there, absolutely, it does not affect the lift. I 100% agree, but it means that something else does. It means that that $3.4 million that is now being spent is not being spent on something else of COVID expenses. So, which means that as a city, we're going to need to find that money. That's where I'm difficult. That's why I'm having a difficulty with this. I'm very, very supportive of us looking at infrastructure and looking at other things to invest. I understand the passion of why people want to have the pool. I don't think it's time. I think it's 6 months, 8 months away before the pool should be open versus now. Once we have a vaccination program in place and so on. I believe I'm in the minority in this voice, but I thought it was important for me to express that opinion. So I will not be supporting this motion this evening. I do see one other person who has put up their hands, and that's Councillor Parkinson. You have spoken twice already, but I'm going to allow you a third if you're wishing to correct something I said. Go ahead.
Nothing to correct, Your Worship. Just disagree, but I'll do that with my vote.
Okay, thank you. I'm giving people one final opportunity and seeing that. People do wish to speak. Councillor Kobayashi and then Councillor Jansen.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I will vehemently disagree with you, Your Worship, on this one also, mainly because I try to understand the guidelines of what this money was allocated for, and it's not actually a tax lift per se, because that's what the subsidy is there for. And so, I mean, I would have looked at it the same way as you did at first, but that's what it's being provided for. And that's why I looked at it and I said, that's an allocation. So it's overall, with everything that has to be reopened up and looking at the details in the appendix, the overall percentage of the total monies that have been allocated to us it's only 12.2%. So that's for everything. That's including the pool. So that's why I will disagree with what you have to say. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen, then Day.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate what you're saying, and actually I find myself agreeing with much of what you say. One of the ways I look at this, though, is that swimming is an activity that can be done by pretty much every demographic. Skateboarding is not, but I do take your point that if we were to put that money into something physical and extract some value for a long period of time, I can get behind that. But one question I did have, and perhaps the West Shore Parks folks can answer this, is this going to be first come, first serve, or because it is an activity that seniors can do, will we be portioning that out to various demographics, or is there a plan, or what?
I can answer that through Your Worship. It'll be set up similar to the way we've run most of our other programs, like our skating drop-in. In essence, the way drop-in is normally thought of isn't being done. It's all pre-registered, and we will have times throughout the day that will hit all the different demographics. So we will have daytime times, afternoon and evening to hit everybody.
So will we have certain sessions that cater to people that are mobility challenged or are just old like me?
Through the chair, we've done that normally. We have swims that are for certain age groups and so on, and we can program them in the same way and just put them at the times of the day that best suit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm going to support the motion, and like many others, I do appreciate your logic, Mr. Mayor, in terms of, bang for your buck. But my reason for supporting this is really that there are some people who really need their physical therapy in order to be able to remain mobile, in order to be able to go for that walk in the park. They need to be in an environment like a pool. It's really good for rehabilitation. It's good for people with disabilities. It's good for seniors. It's good for kids. And there's a huge amount of our population who are really suffering because of COVID and their inability to do the things that they used to be able to do. People are more restricted in getting physical therapy, in getting massage therapy. So this is one of the less expensive things that you can do to help yourself. So for those reasons, I'm supporting this. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? That would be Mayor Martin. Moving on to 7.9. This is...
I never saw your hand go up.
Now you know how it feels, Mayor.
Sorry about that. 7.9, I wish to just make one correction, Council. These are the 2021 Council appointments. There was just one change that needed to occur looking at if you're looking at your motions, it would be the second to last paragraph. And it's that Councillor Stuart Parkinson be appointed to serve as the Director of the Greater Victoria Labour Relations Association, and that Councillor Doug Kobayashi be appointed to serve as the alternate. And it should read, and Councillor Stuart Parkinson be appointed as the AGM delegate. So that is the only change that I wish, Council. But may I have a motion to move those appointments, please? Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor Logan. Is with that amended change, is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.10, this is Jen Hempting, Director of Finance, regarding GV or the Great Victoria Public Library operating agreement side letter. Ms. Hempting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This memo before you is primarily housekeeping in nature. The purpose is to highlight some of the administrative changes pertaining to the Greater Victoria Public Library Board's operating agreement, and in particular with the joint owners of the Juan de Fuca Library branch. So this side letter replaces what was referred to as a legacy library maintenance agreement, and represents an agreement between both the member municipalities, the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society, and the Greater Victoria Public Library Board. And under this side letter, we're seeing a shift in the administrative responsibility, moving from the Greater Victoria Public Library Board to the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society. And the recommendation before you tonight is just seeking approval for the city to sign this side letter. And happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kobayashi, would, you are our representative for the library. Would you like to move the motion? Yeah, you're fine. Okay, thank you. So Councillor Kobayashi has moved it. Councillor Parkinson, I see your name up there. Are you comfortable with seconding? You are? Great. I will go to discussion. Councillor Kobayashi, as the mover, did you wish to add anything? No, you're good?
Yeah, no, it's self-explanatory. It is administrative, so.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, do you wish to make a comment?
No, just tidies things up a little bit, makes it more efficient.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.11, this is Rachel Buskey. This is the Economic Recovery Plan end of year update. Ms. Buskey.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just give me a moment here to share my screen, if that's okay. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
That's
and
awesome.
It looks like ET is landing and is about to get you.
So sorry. We don't have much lighting in the house. Play from beginning. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present an end-of-year progress update on the Economic Recovery Plan. COVID-19 is currently surging in Canada and BC, and Vancouver Island reached 287 active COVID cases during the first week of December. The province imposed restrictions on all events and social gatherings, and these restrictions are now extended to the 8th of January. We're looking forward to the arrival of the first batch of vaccinations, and the province will begin vaccinating 4,000 frontline healthcare workers in long-term care, emergency departments, and acute care hospital units this week. The province anticipates that 400,000 high priority people will be immunised by March, which is just less than 10% of British Columbians. And Dr. Henry expects that a vaccine will be available by early next fall for everyone who wants to receive the vaccine. It's not often that we are asked to step up, but the need is great and the time is upon us to really do everything we can to remove ourselves from the path of this virus and to stop the spread on Vancouver Island. Turning to the Economic Recovery Plan, action items in the plan are structured under 3 overarching goals. The first goal is to reduce the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on Colwood businesses. Action items under this goal seek to reduce negative impacts by reducing the cost burden on developers of building in Colwood, streamlining the permitting process, assisting businesses advertise their presence in the community, and to connect businesses with the West Shore Chamber of Commerce for up-to-date information and resources to help them be as resilient as possible. The Economic Recovery Plan is a living document intended for update and modification in response to changing circumstances and the needs of the business and residential community. With this in mind, this end-of-year report recommends the inclusion of an additional 6 action items to bolster the effectiveness of each of the 3 goals and to make sure we are covering off on the spectrum of needs we are hearing about from the business and the residential community. Given the value of the construction industry to the city, staff recommend that we undertake a survey of Colwood's development and construction industry businesses in early 2021 to fully understand their specific challenges and to work with them in finding solutions that could be useful without financially disadvantaging the city. We are seeing a downward trend in the number of building permits issued by the city since June 2020, and it is important that we take steps to find out everything we can to make sure we are proactively supporting this sector. Staff also recommend the creation of a mayoral forum for business attraction. This recommendation comes from the Economic Development Strategy of 2014. In context of the successes achieved by the City Mayor and Council in attracting major developments to Colwood, like the Royal BC Museum Collections and Archives Building and C-SPAN Office and Warehouse Complex, this could be the very best time to establish a mayoral forum and to take deliberate, purposeful steps to attract new businesses to Colwood. If Council are interested in proceeding with this initiative, staff will bring an additional report to Council on this item to provide detail on how this could work and to identify the likely cost of this initiative for inclusion in 2021 budget deliberations. Goal 2 initiatives to improve long-term community resilience aim to enhance our understanding of Colwood's economy, increase the city's capacity to undertake economic development activities, and to protect and diversify the municipal tax base. Staff recommend that Council consider supporting the development of a feasibility study to identify the best and highest use of 4 hectares of publicly owned land at Royal Bay. This type of feasibility study will empower the mayoral forum with information on the types of businesses the forum could successfully attract to this location to provide benefit to the community into the long term. The objective of Goal 3 action items is to support well-being and to improve the quality of life. To bolster the work already undertaken under this objective, staff propose the inclusion of an additional 3 initiatives. When provincial restrictions are lifted on gatherings, the city proposed the temporary installation of 1 or 2 tent structures on city lands to allow small service groups to meet whilst following the Public Health Officer's safety directives. Staff propose an online booking system to make sure that there are no conflicting group meetings and will put in place risk mitigation measures like maximum people numbers, physical distancing, and contact tracing requirements. Stories of Resilience are a community building tactic aimed to promote Colwood as a caring community and to promote the right behaviours in challenging circumstances. Staff propose a 20-series programme of stories about frontline workers, long-standing members of the community, business owners and priority populations. And the arts sector, moving on to the arts sector, has been one of the most hard-hit sectors during the pandemic. And to address this, staff propose engaging a specialist consultant with arts experience to develop a Phase 1 public art policy and a Phase 2 public art competition. If Council has an interest in proceeding with this action, staff will return with a briefing on the value of this project to Colwood and how this project could be implemented, along with complete cost estimates for inclusion again in the 2021 budget deliberations. And finally, moving on to recommendations. Our recommendations are for the end of year report to be received by Council, that the 6 listed proposed action items be included in the Economic Recovery Plan, that Council approve the removal of 2 action items from the plan, and that Council directs staff to update the Economic Recovery Plan to reflect changes since its endorsement in July 2020. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present this report, and this concludes my presentation. Just find a way out of here and into Zoom.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen.
I was just going to go ahead and get the ball rolling there and move the recommendation.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a list of the names that are on, and then I'll look. Actually, maybe I'll just look. Councillor Kobayashi, are you willing to second that, the motion? And if you're not,
to get the conversation going, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I will go back to Councillor Jansen. Councillor Jansen, do you have any comments? Okay, then I will go to Councillor Kobayashi, then Day, then Baxter.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm not willing to support this motion, mainly because at this point in time, you know, to say that you want this included into this economic recovery plan, I would like an idea of what the cost of this is, you know, in terms of the man hours or people hours and the cash dollars required. You know, we're being told to go ahead and stick this in the plan, but we have no idea what the cost of this is. So this is where I have difficulties with this. So we're seeing part of the picture, but not the whole picture. So I would not support this motion as it stands until that information is made available. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just waiting to see if there's any staff members who are wishing to comment. I'm just looking for a hand. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
Through the chair, actually in the report that we provided, there were costs in the financial considerations section, but there are 2 sections that we're recommending, the Merrill Forum and also the public art policy, that if you folks wanted to go forward with that, we would get involved costs so that we could bring those to the budget deliberations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will move on to Councillor Day. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Borhill wishes to comment. Mr. Borhill, and then Councillor Day.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Rachel basically stated what I had intended to say with that raised hand.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Yeah, there's quite a few things on this list that I would not support. So if we are going to be moving this, I would like to at least vote on them individually. And if they do come forward to budget, I would like to know not just what it costs to hire the coordinator, but how much staff time these are taking to do. So for example, a construction industry survey, we have seen continuously demonstrated in the materials that we've received that the construction industry is actually one of the least impacted. So that's not where I think my dollars should be headed, at least from my point of view. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Baxter, then Parkinson. Councillor Baxter, you're muted.
Parkinson 2, Baxter 1. I have a question about the tent. What is the intent of the tent as opposed to, say, just opening up the hall? I don't mean City Hall. I mean the slipped my mind. The hall by the church.
Emery Hall.
Emery Hall. Thank you.
Through the chair. The issue with Emery Hall is it's very small. and we're not able to get decent people numbers in there. Also, sometimes there are conflicting meetings. For example, the Girl Guides has 5 different meetings per week of different groups. And so there are several community groups that we're sort of looking at to be able to provide this facility for. Also, the other issue is that community groups don't feel comfortable meeting inside at all at the moment. And so they're trying to manage in parks and keeping everybody outside. And so a tent with 2 sides to it instead of the full 4 sides would allow that to be much more of an open area and much safer than going into an enclosed space at this time.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson?
Yeah, I'd just like to discuss the feasibility study to identify the highest and best use of the 4 hectares of land. When council discussed this previously, we had initiated going out for expressions of interest for the gravel stockpiles. I think we decided that they were above and beyond what the city was likely to use. So my understanding at that time was that the first step was going to be see if anybody's interested in the gravel. If they are, I guess my belief is that they would be much more interested if they could leave it where it is and use it out of that site for a number of years, in which case going out to look at what the best use of the land would seem to be premature. So I guess, has anything happened on the use of the gravels? Do we expect that that's going to be a long-term process, in which case we might be jumping the gun to worry about the best and highest use of that land at this time? And that's a question if anybody wants to answer.
Through the chair, this is Brent Wolner speaking to Councillor Parkinson. We did have an offer earlier on in the year. We have not investigated. What I reported last time was that we had gone out, what I reported last time to council was that we had gone out and established surveys, so we know the quantity. We have not had time to pursue purchase and sale it after that at this time.
Okay, so again, we don't know what's going to come of that, if anything, but when it happens, my guess is that there's going to be a much difference in the value of that gravel if it can be used from that site over a number of years, rather than having to be all picked up quickly, moved across town, stockpiled somewhere else, and then taken to whatever project it's used on, which, council may decide that's worth doing or it may not. But anyway, to me, then it's premature to look at the highest and best use of the land.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Day. Councillor Day, what were you looking to have severed? Are you looking to have
well,
separate?
E, B, C, D, E, and F, if we could deal with them separately. I can tell you right now, I'm not feeling supportive of A, C, or E. I'm not sure what the costs are of F, and I certainly could.
Okay, no, that's good.
A couple.
Thank you, Councillor Day. I'll sever all of them. Okay, so I'm gonna work through the paragraphs then. So first of all, I don't see any other hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go first of all that the report titled Economic Recovery Plan End of Year Update be received. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Now moving on, that council approved the following inclusion in the Economic Recovery Plan. Just A, construction industry survey. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. I have Councillor Day, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Parkinson, Councillor Logan, Councillor Baxter opposing. So that one fails. Moving on to B, Merrill, I knew I would have a hard time saying that one. Forum for Business Attraction. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes, that passes. C, the feasibility study to identify the highest and best use of hectares of publicly owned land at Royal Bay. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. That is Councillor Baxter, Councillor Day, Councillor Parkinson, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Kobayashi. So that one fails. D, community meeting spaces. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. I have Councillor Councillor Jansen, Councillor Kobayashi, and Councillor Parkinson. So that motion passes. Stories of resilience. Those in opposition? Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Logan, Councillor Day, Councillor Parkinson opposed. That motion fails. The next one, is develop a public art policy for Colwood and implement professional art competition. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Councillor Jansen and Councillor Kobayashi oppose. Moving on, just because I have severed everything. Actually, yeah, I might as well just do this. So I'm just going to do the final two paragraphs. And that council approved the removal of the following two items, action items for the recovery of the recovery plan. Can somebody please raise their hand if they wish for me to sever 3.8 and 3.12? If just someone just wants to raise their hand if they want to vote in favor of one and in opposition on the other.
Sorry, I've lost you. Where's 3.8?
Sorry. Okay, so I'm looking at the recommendation, Councillor Day.
Oh, you're looking at the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm now on the third paragraph. I'll just give you a moment. Third paragraph. I'll just read it for you too. And it's that council approved the removal. You found it? Yeah. Okay. I'm not seeing any hands saying that people want to sever, so I'm going to do it together.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Sorry, just I would like to sever. If I could please find out what the mobility active transportation plan is that we're talking about.
Okay, staff. Could you please comment on the mobility active transportation plan being removed?
The 3.12, the mobility active transportation plan, was one of the actions contained in the the economic recovery plan. But this specific issue has been dealt with in the parks master planning process and also in the active transportation plan. Mr. Ballhill is able to comment further on the actual active transportation plan.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to speak further on that?
Councillor Day, do you need
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Are you fine with us not severing?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'm going to, looking for that council approve the removal of the following two action items from the recovery plan, 3.8, repurposing road right-of-ways, and the mobility active transportation plan. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes.
Your worship, did we need to move and second those before?
Well, I had a seconder at the beginning.
Okay, so same person all the way through.
I've got the motion. All I've done is sever it. So
Gotcha.
I don't. And then finally, the last thing is that council directs staff to update the economic recovery plan to reflect changes since its endorsement in July of 2020. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Great, thank you. That will take us to 7.12. Council, I do want to just put us all on notice that it is 9:20 right now, so we've got about 40 minutes left before we'll need to look for a motion to extend past. Mr. Borehill, Waterfront Coastal Process Committee, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a rather self-explanatory memo before council tonight. Staff are recommending that the appointments to the Waterfront Coastal Process Committee be rolled over for another year, so that status quo is maintained such that the committee would be in place until the end of 2021. That concludes my introduction. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen?
I'll move that.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Logan. Thank you. I'm going to clear people's hands. Is there any discussion? Councillor Day, then Kobayashi. Councillor Day?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Kobayashi, did you wish to discuss?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will kindly request to be taken off that committee because it's far too many committees that I'm attending right now. So I've indicated that I did want my name removed. I'm just the liaison guy anyways. So anyways, if I can kindly request that at this point.
Certainly. What we'll do is we'll look at the next council meeting. We'll look at reappointing somebody else. Thank you for that notice. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.13. This is Mr. Borhill again regarding the Heritage Vision Statement recommendations in 2020 end of year update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I wanted to give you a chance as chair of the meeting to I was going to take some time and have some fun with this presentation. Being that it's quite late in the evening, I wanted to warn council and give you the opportunity to defer this. There would be no impact to our operations if that was the case. But I've got about 10 minutes to speak to the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Council, I will look, I'm not going to look for an, yeah, okay. Actually, I see Councillor Jansen unmuting. Go ahead, Councillor Jansen.
I was going to say, I'm happy to table that or defer,
sure.
whatever works better.
Okay, so Councillor Jansen has made a motion to table to the next council meeting. Councillor Kobayashi has seconded that. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? There is nobody opposed. Mr. Borhill, do not, and I think you understand this, please don't take it personally. It's certainly not about you. It's the night's getting long. Moving on to bylaws. Bylaw number 8.1. This is bylaw number, 8.1 is bylaw number 1700-02. This is the official community plan amendment bylaw. This is for Meaford and this is for adoption. I do wish to let council know that I have confirmed that the development agreement has been registered. That's why it was pushed back before, and that's why it's before us tonight. So looking for a mover and seconder, moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 8.2, bylaw number 1817, land use amendment CD 29 Meaford. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 8.3, bylaw number 1843, main sewer LAS enlargement, 535 Cedar Crest Drive, and this is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, second by Councillor Baxter. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. And then finally, 8.4, bylaw number 1852, land use amendment. This is for 1764 Island Highway, first and second reading. Moved by Councillor Logan, second by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. That motion passes. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. That's a wrap for 2020. Wow, what a year. I can't say anything other than that. Thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. Be well over the Christmas holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see everybody in the new year. Good night, everybody.
Merry
Good night,
Christmas.
all.
Oh, excuse me. Wait.
Merry Christmas.
Adjournment.
Ho, ho,
Sorry,
ho.
we motioned to adjourn, which is Councillor Logan. Although somebody else wanted to. Who was the other person? Councillor Day sneak in there today. Those in opposition? Seeing none, that motion passes. Councillor Parkinson, did you want to say something just before? I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to say something. The meeting's now officially over, but if anybody wants to make any final comments, feel free.
No, just best of the season to everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, stay well, everybody, as we have our Grinchly Christmas.
Yes, exactly. Okay, awesome. And just as a reminder to council, remember about Thursday at 5 p.m.
I just wanted to echo your earlier thoughts, Your Worship. I want to thank staff for all the hard work this year and what they've achieved.
Very, very much so.
Merry
All right.
Christmas all.